Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the stories of some of America's most successful lawyers, figuring out what makes them tick, how they creatively solve problems, and how others aspiring to be them can follow in their footsteps.
Yeah. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Latte with a Lawyer. I'm your host, Jonathan Brickman, and this morning we have with us Keith Rosten of from the law firm of Berliner Corcoran Rowe. Good morning, Keith. How are you?
Good morning, Jonathan. I'm doing fine. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Good to have you. So I know we chatted a little bit before we got on here, and you're getting to go skiing, so you must have some coffee. Latte with a Lawyer. What's your morning jet fuel to get started?
Always French roast, 1 cup, and with a little bit of sugar, and that's about it.
All right, good.
But I'm partial to Pete's.
Really? Why? Why Pete's?
I don't know. It's it has a more flavor than than Starbucks, but I'll take Starbucks.
Yeah.
I've had so much bad coffee in my time that any good coffee is good.
Yeah, there you go. I'm with you. When you get good coffee, you always know it. It's like, oh, that's a good cup, for sure. Anyway, good deal. So you got an interesting background here. So tell everybody about your practice and what you're doing these days.
Okay, so I'm a partner in Berliner Corcoran Rowe, and the firm does a lot of different things. My practice is focused on relatively small businesses, usually under a couple hundred employees, and I'm outside general counsel for a lot of very interesting, startups, small businesses. I do general business transactions. I do mergers and acquisitions, and my clients really run the gamut from, we're here in Washington, D.C. I have a lot of clients who have a footprint in government contracting. I represent a lot of nonprofits, some larger nonprofits, excuse me. And then in terms of the other businesses, they really run the gamut. A lot of consulting firms, personal service firms. I do represent some high-tech startups. They have apps, software development, things like that. And it makes it for every day is a very interesting day as I try to provide them with legal support.
Yeah, interesting. You had your own business, it looks like, at one point.
Right. So I've had my own business, and I was a government contractor before I decided to rejoin the practice of law, and I ended up I sold solar energy products, completely unrelated to some of the other things that I've done in my career. I've had probably 3 or 4 different careers, and one of them was as a government contractor working on solar energy products. The day that I sold that to a private equity outfit, then I decided to hang up my own shingle, and I was had a small practice before I merged that into Berliner Corcoran Rowe about 5 years ago.
Oh, very good, excellent. So what was the solar business? What was that? Commercial, residential? What kind of solar?
So we sold solar energy products.
Yeah.
And there were really 3 separate businesses. Ran the largest forum on solar energy on the internet, number one, and that was the easiest part of it, because that kind of run itself and people were very interested in what was going on. And it was also, the easiest part of it because I didn't do that much for it. I just moderated it, and it was a lot of fun to do.
Oh, nice.
Then there was the government contracting piece, and that was basically selling various solar energy products, mostly photovoltaic panels to the government, all different parts of the country, all different parts of the world. And then the third piece was the retail e-commerce piece, where I was selling to the general public. And I was a merchant on Amazon and things like that. And
oh, cool.
That was the most time intensive and the least enjoyable.
At least enjoy. Okay, good. Well, it sounds like you had a good exit there, which is great. So what, are you bullish on solar energy?
Well, renewable energy is going to,
Yeah.
take over, and the targets are pretty aggressive, but I think that they will meet them, and that means that solar and wind and hydro, they're going to be a major piece of the
The grid.
the grid and our sources of energy, certainly, in the next couple of decades. When I started, it was minuscule. It was like 0.2% with solar, so it started from a very low baseline, and things are getting better.
It's still pretty small. I mean, I was just listening the other day about, people are still, I mean, in China, they're still firing up coal-fired plants, and, oil and gas is still a major part of the energy platform. So, I mean, even though we've been pushing pretty hard, it's still just a very small component, right? But you're still optimistic about it. Good.
Very optimistic.
Good.
I mean, there's really no other alternative. It's going to be solar, and it's going to be
contrary to what other people are saying. I agree with you. There really is no other alternative.
Yeah.
So interesting. So take me through like your story. So I mean, it's interesting that you have, you got an MBA, so you're business oriented, obviously. I mean, tell me how you became a lawyer. Like, what was that path like? And tell me about the whole MBA piece. I'm curious to hear that.
Right. Well, my first job was out of law school. I graduated from the University of Illinois, and I took a year off after law school and worked for the Israeli Environmental Protection Service, basically as a lawyer in their legal department, and that was a lot of fun. I was in Israel. Yeah.
Nice.
And then I came back and I worked for what was then considered big law, which was about 130 lawyers in a downtown Los Angeles law firm. I worked the crazy hours and did litigation, mostly business litigations, product liability litigation. And it was very interesting. I enjoyed the people I worked with, although litigation was not in my blood. And I thought that I wanted to do something different. I'd done the sort of what a lot of people did in those days, which was, high school, college, law school with no breaks in between. Right. And so I didn't have a business background, and I realized while I was in practicing law that my business background was pretty weak. So I decided to go back to school and get an MBA, and I went to the tech school at Dartmouth College and got my MBA. And then I came out, and then it was right about that time in the 90s that the Soviet Union was breaking up, and I ended up getting into international development consulting. And so worked on my first entree to that was I was a Fulbright lecturer in Kazakhstan, and ended up teaching. I'd studied Russian as an undergrad, so I taught a class in Russian in economics, and then which is basically like like business 101 course at one of the schools in Almaty in Kazakhstan, and I also taught at the law school there, with private law school, Adalet Law School, and I taught a course in basically comparative law, and I had it was a lot of fun. I mean, in those days there wasn't. It was pretty challenging because you didn't really know where your food was going to come from. I mean, I wasn't going to starve, but it was definitely a challenge every day, not only just to get to class, but also to where were they going to have eggs those days? And this was this was quite I was an eyewitness to history as I watched one country disintegrating and one country arising from the ashes. So and that was an interesting experience. I came back and I thought, okay, what am I going to do now? And then I ended up was offered this job in Moscow as legal advisor to a large USAID project, Agency for International Development. And we were supposed to developed the legal infrastructure for a market economy in Russia. And so, well, it was interesting, and the 90s was an interesting time in Moscow because it was a lot of hope and a lot of chaos.
Right.
And
wait, so who was in power then when that was happening?
That was Yeltsin.
Yeltsin,
yeah, Yeltsin. So I did that. My international development career lasted for about 15 years. And I ended up working not only in Russia, but in a lot of other countries in that part of the world, Mongolia, down in the Balkans. Did a lot of work in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and made way too many trips to Tajikistan. And it was always an interesting endeavor, just being around. And I like telling this story so that when I was in Russia, everyone would want to go to Europe to go shopping, and then when I was in Kazakhstan, everyone wanted to go to Moscow to go shopping, and then when I was in Kyrgyzstan, they wanted to go to Kazakhstan to go shopping, and then when I was in Tajikistan, they would go to Kyrgyzstan to go shopping, and finally, when I was in Tajikistan, I found out that all the Afghans came up across the border, went shopping in Afghanistan. I mean, went shopping in Tajikistan. So, it all depends upon which way you look at the glass.
That's right.
Half full or half empty in what part of the world. But so that was my international development career. And
how many years?
My passion was in Russia and the former Soviet Union, and then
Looks like we lost you. We lost you there for a minute. We'll splice it in. It's fine.
Okay. So, in that time, it was the new opportunities for anyone who loved international development. The opportunities were in Afghanistan, and I did not consider myself an expert in Afghanistan or that part of the world. So that's when I decided to go into something else, which was starting my own company in the solar energy products, which I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And I did that for 6 years. And then I came back and decided to do something that I really had not planned on doing, which was rejoining the private practice of law. And what was more surprising to me is that I really enjoyed it. And I think that a lot of my clients, especially, they were clients like I was a small business. They appreciated my perspective, which was I was a government contractor, they were a government contractor. I was a small business, they were a small business, and they had all the same types of challenges that I had, so that I could relate to them in a way that I think other lawyers who had not had that background would be able to. And so, if they were government contractors and they were working on some type of issue, those are things that I had done not only as a lawyer, but I had the same challenges as a government contractor. So I think that just made me more attractive for my clients. And then instead of actually doing it, I'm not only providing them with legal support, but a lot of my clients, and to this day, I won't say they rely on my business counsel, but they certainly listen to me when I talk, because I have a perspective that and background that I think that they may not that they value.
Oh yeah, I would think you're the ideal outside general counsel. I mean, you have both. You have the business and the legal perspective. It's perfect, right? It's a perfect marriage. So, but it sounds like you're more like business oriented than being a pure lawyer.
No, I'm a pure lawyer,
Okay.
you know, and I think, and I tell my clients all, you know, every single day, I say, you know, you have to listen to my legal guidance, and my business counsel is really for you to take into account, but you're in the trenches and you have to decide for yourselves. You know, consultants come in and out, and you know, they and they don't have to live with their decisions.
Right.
The business owner, the executives, you know, the investors, they're the ones who have to live with those decisions, and they have to make up their minds. And so usually my counsel is, these are your options. And I try to lay those out to them, both from a legal standpoint as well as a business standpoint. And then I let them decide what it is which is the right fit for them.
Got it. Very interesting. Where are you from originally?
Originally from California, Los Angeles.
Oh, okay. How'd you get to, and you went to school in Illinois. Interesting.
Right. And so my undergraduate was at UC Irvine in Russian. And at that time at the University of Illinois, there was a professor who taught Soviet law, which is one of the few law schools in the country. And I went there, and I was very fortunate that I got a full ride to study Soviet law while I was at law school.
Okay. And what was the interest in Russian history in Russia?
That's a very good question. I'll say that I wanted to be an English major, and they needed a language, and I wanted to have something as impractical as possible, because I thought that I was not going to be very facile with languages, because I'd studied Latin in high school. So I said, okay, you know, Russian is as good as any. Spanish and French are way too practical. And so I chose Russian, and then I ended up getting my degree in Russian. And then I ended up at the University of Illinois, and ended up, you know, spending a lot of time thinking that my Soviet law was never going to be of any use to the practice of law. And but it turned out to be a lot of what I did for 20 years in my career.
Is that a hard language to learn?
For me, any language is hard to learn. You know, I think that a lot of people are put off because of the Cyrillic alphabet, but that's the least of the problems.
Okay.
You know, you learn the alphabet and they're just sounds, but I found that it was a challenging language, and probably the thing that really gave me the biggest you know, impetus to learn it well was when I had a classroom of 100 students who had to listen to me babble on in Russian about American law, and so the night before I would be up late trying to make sure that I got the terminology down and make sure that I understood what I was talking about.
Yeah, interesting. So there's obviously been a big transformation in Russia. How would you characterize what's going on today versus when you were there?
Well, when I was there, it was a different country, you know, different people. The 1990s was really the Wild West. I mean, there was a lot of chaos, and unfortunately, you know, people who were part of the power structure were able to capitalize that and make a lot of money. And, you know, you've heard about the oligarchs and the people who were able to consolidate power in the 2000s. But the 1990s, as chaotic as it was a time of hope. And, you know, people wanted to exercise the franchise, and they wanted to be part of the West. And those days are long since gone. I think that the West was deluded by some of Putin's charm, but he really never made any in the early 2000s, and you know, it was he never changed his perspective, and somehow the West thought that they could wine and dine him and curly up to him, and so that he would join the West. And that was really never part of his plan. For him, always was the biggest catastrophe for the 20th century was the downfall of the Soviet Union. And and he never changed his tune. and I think it was first in Georgia, and then of course in Ukraine. He's just done what he's always said he was going to do, I'm pessimistic so long as Putin is in power that things will probably not change very much.
Yeah. I mean, so what was the sense of like the people on the ground how much time did you spend there in that part of the world?
I lived in Kazakhstan for a year. I lived in Moscow for 2 years, and I lived in Saint Petersburg for almost 4 years.
Oh, so you spent a lot of time there. So what was your sense of the people there and what they wanted out of life?
Probably my time in St. Petersburg, where I was pretty cut off from Western community. It was a time where I think people were trying to figure what it meant to be in a market economy. I lived, somewhat close to the center of town. I had 2 kids. They went to a private Russian school. So I got to know a lot of the parents, and my kids were the only non-Russians, except for one Chinese student, in this entire school.
Wow.
And it was a magnificent experience because it was a time of of promise, where people were looking forward, how they can get on the up escalator and try to eke out a living with promise and hope. And once it opened up, people were traveling all over the place, and I went down to there were these charter flights that you go down to Turkey, and everything was opening up. It really was an open society, and it was really, the fact is that this used to be our greatest enemy, and now in the 2000s there was this idea that there could be Russia could be a great ally of us.
Yeah Interesting. I remember I was in the financial services markets, and all the American bankers were going over there trying to take advantage of it in the 2000s, early 2000s.
Yeah. Right. Well, and it wasn't only the bankers; it was the PR people and all of the the retailers, and it was a great new market. In those days, at least in the 1990s and 2000s, it was cheap labor, and it was relatively open, so people could set up. But the bureaucracy definitely became very difficult, and certainly the corruption exacted a very heavy toll. And so some of the most well-known people who really wanted to help Russia ended up being targets of the Russian mafia, and it was pretty brutal. I mean, it was not an easy time. I don't want to paint a rosy picture, because it was very difficult living, and people were definitely, even in the 2000s, there were still people that were who had any money would be subject to hits, and and it was not an easy time. The banking system certainly improved by the 2000s, in contrast to the 1990s when I was there. I mean, we would basically go in the 1990s with we'd have to pay everybody in cash, so the ATMs weren't working. I mean, so it was very difficult. So it was a cash economy, and so that made it relatively challenging. By the 2000s, you put in your ATM card and get out cash, or get out dollars, get out rubles, or get out euros, and it was much easier to do business.
Got it. So any kids following in your footsteps to be a lawyer?
That's a good question. I don't know that. I would love for them. I have one. I have 2 kids in college and 1 in high school.
Okay.
I think my older son is going to be an engineer, but engineers. And when I was at business school, a third of my classmates were engineers. Patent lawyers are, if you want to be a patent lawyer, you're definitely an engineering background. So yeah, I mean, it's not too late. But so he's into mechanical engineering. I have another son who's hasn't decided what career he's interested in. But I think his passion is military history.
That's in Norwich. That's the one in Norwich.
That's the one he's at Norwich. And then I don't know what my high school daughter wants to do yet.
Okay, where do you live in DC? I lived in DC Metro for about 17 years.
Okay.
Where do you live?
I live not too far from the Van Ness UDC Metro.
I know well. I lived right up the road. I lived in AU Park, and then I lived in Bethesda for 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. And I live literally right next to Rock Creek Park. So hiking, beautiful. Bicycling, and it's really good. And so people come over and they say, I thought you said you lived in Washington, D.C. As we look out, there are deer in the backyard, and we have foxes there. And it's not necessarily the same type of urban living that you would find in New York.
All right. That's a gem, Rock Creek Park. Yeah, really nice. Yeah, no, I miss those days. I spent a lot of time there, but a great place. So what would your advice be today for somebody that was considering a career to be a lawyer, or the kind of stuff that you've done? What would you tell people?
Well, unfortunately, my career was not planned at all.
Yeah.
There was a class that I was a guest lecturer at University of Illinois. By one of the people that I worked with on some of these international development projects was a professor there, and he taught a course in international development, which I thought was the strangest thing at all. And there were probably 60 or 70 students, and every one of them had the same question that you did, Jonathan, which was, how do I get into this?
Oh, okay.
And there really isn't an easy answer. For international development, it's basically you should, the best way to get into international development, that's what you're interested in, is to follow your passion, get an expertise in some area of the law that you like and you want to study, and then your expertise will lead you into international development work. There's really no career of international development. That you say, I want to do this. I mean, people fall into it from a lot of different ways, but the private practice of law, or if you're working as a lawyer for a nonprofit, for private practice, and the way that I ended up, doing the kinds of work that I'm doing, it was again something that I think that I'm just very interested in business and small business. And I think that, like every day when you go to work, you have to enjoy what you were doing. When I was early in my career, I liked the people that I worked with, but I did not enjoy going to work every day. And I did not really feel like I was making a contribution in litigation. And this new career path, which is, outside general counsel, I feel like I'm supporting a lot of businesses that are doing some very interesting things, and I'm enjoying providing that type of support and watching them make a contribution to the economy and make some money as they go along, and I think I can provide some good guidance in that. So I enjoy it. Washington, D.C. is a great place to be. Obviously, the pandemic took its toll, and there were some times when the few times that I came down to downtown during the pandemic, I might have been the only person on the entire metro car. Now, the other day, I think last week, they said that it was the most crowded it's been since pre-COVID days, and it wasn't an empty seat on the entire metro car that I was on, and it's getting to be much more crowded, and people are coming back to life. So and I think as much as you can provide a lot of the support remotely, I think that I enjoy the collegiality of working with a law firm, having people. I think that the product that you provide to the businesses and your clients is better if you are working with other people. And so I like that, and I like having the opportunity to go into the office and talk to my colleagues. And if there's a particularly challenging issue, that I am able to talk with them about it. And a lot of them are refugees from big law, and so they have a good perspective that allows me to work, and I think provide a good product to my clients.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It'd be interesting to see where we finally strike that balance from remote and in person, but I think people need to be together. I agree with you. How big is the law firm? How many lawyers, Jeff?
We have 22 lawyers, mostly in DC. We have one lawyer in San Francisco.
Okay.
And the other lawyers, they do some very interesting things. They work on sanctions work, and which is of course a definitely growing business with Russian sanctions.
Yeah.
Then there's a group that's well known for its export controls. So if you're exporting anything to any other country, it's good to make sure that you have counsel to make sure that you're not exporting anything that's prohibited. And then we have a major litigation group.
What kind of litigation does that group do?
It's mostly business litigation, and there's a part of it that right now they are very much involved on the plaintiff side in Helms-Burton, which is the Cuban property cases.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Okay, good. Well, listen, I know you got your skis and you're ready to go skiing. So, just final words you want to leave with the audience about your firm and the best way to connect.
Well, the best way to connect to me is email at krosten@bcrlaw.com. Again, it's krosten@bcrlaw.com.
Yep.
I have a lot of resources that I still keep on my other site. So if you're looking for resources that are free, take a look at rostenlaw.com. And I have 6 years or 7 years of articles there for startups and small businesses. And a lot of my clients actually find me through some of those articles. For those who are looking for outside general counsel work, I'm available and like to talk with people. I provide a free consultation up front, and a lot of times, even though if it's not a good fit, I enjoy talking to my to the people and finding out the challenges that they face, because it helps me provide a better service to my other clients. And then if you're interested in doing similar type of work, then probably in my view, there's for law students. I think that a big law environment, even for a couple of years out of law school, if you can get one of those jobs, I know that it becomes very competitive over time, but I think that's a very good training ground, and I highly recommend it. Even though it may not be, great for your social life, it's certainly good for your professional career.
Got it. Excellent. Good stuff. Yeah, all my friends in DC were all lawyers for these big law firms you were mentioning. You name it. I think you could trip over lawyers in DC, right? There's so many.
There are many lawyers, and especially with these large law firms. And government lawyers. Although the government lawyers are not coming back into the office. I think I saw a statistic recently that about only half of them are going back into the office.
Interesting. All right. Well, listen, it's very enjoyable. I enjoyed speaking with you. For everybody, again, Keith Rosten, and I'm going to read the firm Berliner Corcoran Rowe, or otherwise BCR. And this is sponsored by EmotionTrac, which is a legal tech platform. And we help litigators prepare for remediation and trials with our Insights platform. Well, listen, good luck on the slopes. Don't hurt yourself.
Okay.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Thank you very much.
You bet.